Well, welcome back to the EFCA Network podcast. I'm Darin, your host here, and I'm joined today by Glen Schrieber, District Superintendent for the Southeast District. John Secrest is a pastor church planter in Naples, Florida, and Kevin Watterson, who is directing the crisis response team in the Englewood Fort Myers area. And so today we're going to talk a little bit about crisis response, kind of the overall idea where it came from and how it's working, and zoom in on what's happening in Southwest Florida. So Kevin, take us in. Give us a little background on crisis response, where the idea came from, and your part in it, and just a little bit of your story.
All right, thanks, Darin. Yeah, the crisis response really was kind of born out of Hurricane Katrina back in 2005. There were some, I guess, inklings of things prior to that, but that's kind of where it really got its legs and was developed through Mark Lewis, our director, and he came down to Katrina after a couple of days. I think Jim Snyder, one of the other EFCA Reach Global folks that was down, asked him to come, and there was some connection there. They knew each other. Mark ended up stepping into the role of leadership in that during Hurricane Katrina response. And really our story starts about a year and a half later of us coming into crisis response. But crisis response really was, it's our motto is sharing the love of Christ with those in need. And it's really kind of walking into the aftermath of crisis, knowing that there's a mission field that's created in the wake of every crisis. So we called crisis the disruption of the normalcy of life. So really anything that kind of disrupts your normal flow of life can be considered crisis by our definition. And response is really, you have a response to an event, or you have a response to a call from God. I think a lot of times we use the indicator that, back in the kind of older liturgical parts of church history, we've had the call and response where the leader calls out and the congregation responds. And that's kind of what we've looked at as the definition of response, God's call on us into someone's disruption of the normalcy of life. So that's kind of our definition. That's why we're not called disaster relief. A lot of people get that mixed up. And we're not that. We come in with a long-term view of how we can come alongside of churches and really help them identify their DNA and their service kind of within the community, and how they want to engage with the community, and really come alongside of them in what they've been doing prior to the crisis that exists, and then kind of working with that and seeing what kind of resources they have available. And then for us, just, as we step into the extension of the church, being the extension of the church itself, by bringing in volunteers from outside of the area, and these kinds of cases where we have flooding and tornadoes and hurricanes and those natural sorts of things, we have opportunities to meet the physical needs of people underneath the umbrella of the local church, but also within the greater EFCA family, and really start to draw on some of those other churches that would want to come, and we're trying to provide pathways for them to come and to serve on short-term missions within the EFCA family. But that extends outside as well. We have a lot of churches that are not EFCA that come and serve with us as well, and send a team to come and to help. So that's kind of a broad picture, I guess, of what we do and kind of the definition of it. And really our story comes in where I came as a volunteer, as many of our staff have. I came as a volunteer in December of 2005, right after Hurricane Katrina had happened, 3 months or so, 4 months after. with a group of 20 guys or 25 guys from my local church and home church in Pennsylvania. And I just remember specifically driving kind of up and down this really long driveway with the skid loader hauling brush out to the street for the FEMA trucks to come and pick up. And as I'm driving back and forth, one of our guys on the team, who was very relational, was sitting on the front porch of a home and was talking with the homeowner. And at one point, as I'm driving by, I saw him praying with the homeowner. And I really thought, this is really what missions is all about. It's not about meeting the physical needs and just cleaning things up and being there, but it's also how do we engage those homeowners in a way that is meaningful in their spiritual, emotional, intellectual, relational needs. At the same time, we're doing the physical, meeting the physical needs of people. So that's really how that's the short story of how God called me into this mission. And I've been part of it since, I guess we finally got through our process in 2007, February of 2007. And we came with the expectation that we would be here with a year commitment. So it's been a really long year.
Oh, that's great. And I mean, I was with Kevin just a week ago and saw his skill with the Bobcat. So, I mean, Kevin, what was your background before crisis response? What were you doing? I assume the Lord had prepared you to do some of this kind of work.
Yeah, I had several. I guess I grew up kind of as a farm kid. I'm the first generation that was not raised on the farm on both sides of my family, but kind of was, spent a lot of time in my high school years and junior high years working on the farm. So I was familiar with equipment and those sorts of things, the stuff you have to do to kind of keep a farm running. But I also had some experience. I grew up Mennonite and had some experience with youth evangelism service, which is one of the programs that the Mennonite Church has for short-term missions. And it's based similar to what YWAM is, where you have a discipleship training course, and then you're kind of released to your field of development or field of service. And we spent a lot of time working with MCC missionaries doing different community project sorts of things. And I was in that program for about 3 rotations. I went on one team to Haiti and 3 other teams actually to Jamaica. So had some of that in my background, and kind of had the missions bug within that. But then at coming back from that, wasn't sure what I was going to do. And my neighbor, who happened to have an HVAC company, invited me to join him in his business. And long story short, after downturn in the economy, I got laid off and ended up starting my own business after about 2 years of kind of wandering around. And so my wife and I had a heating and air conditioning business that we had started. And that's kind of what God called me out of. So I have a fairly high level of skill within the mechanical disciplines with HVAC, plumbing, electrical, those sorts of things. I hated doing woodwork. I hated doing drywall, but God has used this to teach me ways to do that, and actually ways to teach other people to do it as well. So as we work with the volunteers, we have a pretty wide variety of skill sets within the ministry, and that's strictly in the construction and cleanup sorts of things. I mean, we got other places where people can plug in with trauma care and connecting with people and having, just those conversations that really lead to gospel conversations, and building relationships with people. So we need those kinds of folks as well in what we do. But that's kind of how God got me into the fold, so to speak, of crisis response and being part of the ministry.
Yeah, and I love how you said it, that it's about partnering with the local church, and that's what sets up. Then, okay, phase 2 of this phone call is to get into it with Glen. Glen, share a little bit about Eastern Kentucky and just the relationship of the district and the churches with crisis response.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of crisis response, and Kevin and his wife and the team in particular. because I have called often and they have responded just as often as hurricanes, flooding, tornadoes, and so forth have come into our district. Our district is one of 17 in the EFCA. We have a broad swath of 9 states here in the Southeast, so we're familiar with all of those life happenings when nature decides to show up. And recently, there in Eastern Kentucky, with the unbelievable amount of rain and the flooding that came from that, 5 of our churches were impacted. Their communities were devastated. So Kevin and I and his team, we were on the phone right away, just saying, how can we help? And the idea is first coming alongside our own EFCA family, checking in on our pastors, the congregations, then their church facilities, seeing what we can do first just to take care of family. And our goal then is, as the families are taken care of, then we can extend that family, so to speak, to their communities and to be able to reach out and take this opportunity to help them. And so again, Kevin and his team, they were on the ground there right away, just analyzing the situation, developing strategies, building the infrastructure to be able to then put out another call to teams to come in and to be able to help support those congregations there that needed the help. And then we'll get to John here, who's with us as well, who's a pastor in Naples, and just what took place in Southwest Florida. But again, put a call out there. And with the hurricanes, you get a chance to talk about that even before it arrives. And Darin, we thought it'd be coming your way to Tampa, only to find out it decided to turn right and sooner than we expected, and ended up impacting John. But I think the point is even in our own families, as life happens, crisis comes, your family is exposed. Are we going to show up for each other? Are we going to let this crisis kind of bring us together and kind of forget about whatever might have happened in the past and jump on, or not? And the same thing with our family of churches. We get that chance to where we're just going along in our daily business and aren't necessarily cooperating with one another, not because we don't want to, just because we haven't needed to, but then to find out, wow, this is bigger than us. We need help from each other's church in the area, as well as our larger EFCA churches. And thankfully, that's what we're seeing here, both in Eastern Kentucky and Southwest Florida, is the family showing up in respect to crisis response, and respect to other congregations that have brought work teams down, and to see just how our pastors like John have jumped in, seen it for what it is, and are able to use it strategically to love on their communities. So huge fan, and just appreciate all that they have done and are doing for us. Hopefully don't have to use them. Hopefully I don't have to put that call out too often, but when I have to, it's nice to have them there. Yeah.
It's a great setup. And that takes us to John. So yeah, John, talk us through a little bit of just what happened in Naples and Southwest Florida, and then how crisis response came in and what's been going on with that.
Sure. Well, I think everybody knows from the news, pretty fresh for us. Hurricane Ian, a very strong Category 4 storm, and Southwest Florida is used to this. So most of our structures are built to sustain that strength of a storm. But what no one's really prepared for is 12 to 15 feet of storm surge that really devastated those areas that are near water. And so that was the primary impact of the storm. So you have people who live inland who still experienced a hurricane, very much so, but our structures were strong enough that, in a few days we recovered. But there were many communities on waterways, intercoastal ways, especially those, right on the coast, that were devastated. And it caught us by surprise, as you said, Glenn. We thought it was heading to Tampa. So once we
have a force field. I don't know why people are surprised about this. It's the Tampa Bay. It's a thing.
Right. So we started calling around. Are we okay? Is everybody all right? And you saw, most of the people in the country saw what had happened here long before any of us who lived here did, because we didn't have power for days. But as the power came back on and we were able to communicate and see, we realized there were, we had friends who were rescued from their condo in a boat. They had to get out a window that's how quickly things and rapidly they changed here, and people were in great danger. So in the days after that, we realized parts of our community were devastated. Other parts, felt very little impact. So the question was for us, how do we respond to those areas that were devastated? And many of the areas that were devastated are lower income. They might be retirement, but they're not wealthy. Most people are not insured for flood. They might even have hurricane insurance, but it didn't cover flood, even if it was storm surge. And some of these communities also are whether they're retirement or they're laborers, and they don't have all the money. So these communities are devastated, and they don't know what to do, of how to rebuild. And so that's where we got. And one of our members, he works in a restaurant, and one of his coworkers lives in this community that we've really targeted. It's very close to Naples, just right north of us in Bonita Springs. And you might call it a trailer park, but it's a manufactured home community. These are permanent structures on these lots, but they got some of them, 9-foot storm surge, 4 or 5 feet in the house. Some of the roofs were blown off. We have lots of pictures that, it just, one block, it looks like nothing happened, and then all of a sudden you hit it, and the houses had to be gutted and torn apart, and it's pretty traumatizing to see that happen. So I guess I would say, I was familiar with crisis response for sure, but like many pastors, you may not really know what it is until you really need it. And so when we began communicating, and Kevin and some other team members started arriving, Glenn and I took a ride around the community to assess what some of the damage was. And I'm learning on the fly a little bit. How do we do this? I'm trained to pastor a church, not respond to a disaster of this scope. So I needed help. I needed resources and someone to coach me. How can I help my congregation respond appropriately? And I think what has been the greatest encouragement for me, with the help of Reach Global Crisis Response, is understanding how to use our calling to multiply healthy churches in our community. I mean, we're the only free church in Collier County, and Ron Johnson in Fort Myers is the only free church in Lee County. That's 2 small free churches for 1 million people. And our prayer has been, God, help us reach our community, open doors. How do we reach this community? And the hurricane certainly created an immediate felt need, but it's opening up doors for us for ministry in ways that in the good times we would never have. Yeah. And so that's been a learning curve for me, and I appreciate the coaching and the encouragement of Kevin and some of his team members to broaden our vision as a local church as to how this can serve our mission of multiplying disciple-making churches.
Well, and I can attest to that too, just how catalytic an event like this can be. Because my church was just filled with people who were grateful, that it went south of us. And then so we heard, okay, Kevin and his team are coming, and we're like, okay, looks like 8 people from 4 states. And so we threw together a little meal for them, grabbed them some housing and stuff, and helped coordinate some collection of supplies that then we loaded up onto their trucks with them and stuff. But that was a significant thing just for my little church to be able to say we can be a part of this initially. And then we've tracked with Kevin, just sent a team down to work with him in the Englewood area. But I mean, Kevin, take us into what it was like as you guys, just kind of pull in 3 days after the storm or something. As soon as the doors are open, as the roads are open, what's that like as you just come in and are assessing? What are you looking for? How do you make decisions?
Yeah, when we come in, we're looking at I'm thinking both in the context of the hurricane in South Florida, but also Southwest Florida, but also in the Kentucky response. We're looking for churches that are kind of ready to engage, I guess, or I mean, if they've been affected, obviously we're looking at the body itself, and if they've been affected, we want to help the church get the building restored. If the building has been affected, the church members to have some semblance of normalcy return, because if the church isn't healthy that way, they're not going to be able to reach out into their own communities and minister. And having been through Hurricane Ida the year before, having it hit our area and our house, it puts a different perspective when you come into these situations and realize that people don't have the ability to function well and make decisions. And, you're trying to do life at the same time you get hammered with a storm, and now life gets turned upside down with that. So from the church perspective, we want to come in, we want to restore the body. The second thing we want to do is try and find a way to build kingdom communities and use that network of the churches that kind of step out into the broader neighborhoods of the church members and affect the folks who are maybe in friends, neighbors, work associates, those sorts of relationships that already exist, get into those situations. And then in these types of situations, the other thing we're looking at is how do we bring in people to provide these pathways from other churches to come and do the short-term missions trip. So you have the logistics of figuring out, okay, how do we bring in the volunteers? And we want to see transformation affected to the volunteers, not just to the homeowners and the people that we're serving. And we want to see those volunteers come for a week and say, how does this 1 week of service impact the rest of your 51 weeks of the rest of the year for you? And taking that transformation back home to their own home, local communities and neighborhoods, and see some of those things happen. So when we're coming in and we're looking at what's going on and trying to assess what's happening, a lot of times I'm looking at the logistics of how do we set up a place where the teams can come and serve, and the church or some other place that exists that we can host these teams to come in. So at the same time, you're looking at trying to connect with the local church, get an assessment of what the church is experiencing, what the needs are within the church congregation. You're also trying to put together, what do the actual logistics look like? Does the church have, a lot of churches have kitchens. A lot of churches have just space that you can use to set up an office or to set up places for bunk rooms or just sleeping on the floor or whatever. A lot of churches don't have showers. And that would be one of the things I would say is churches are looking at putting their, building a new church or adding on, like, put in a shower or two. You've got the opportunity to do that. Nobody wants to spend the money on that, but it sure would be helpful in these kinds of situations. And you just can't, normally plan, I guess, for those sorts of things. But anyway, in the case of Fort Myers, we were able to come in and bring in a shower trailer, set that up there. So we have a place for the volunteers to sleep. They have a place to eat. They have a place to shower and clean up. And those are really some of the basic things that we need to have in that situation. In Kentucky, we didn't really have space. That's so narrow, and the valleys are so deep, and the church itself is only about 30 feet wide and it's 100 feet long. We didn't have a place to really put anything, so we ended up taking a room in the basement that already had a sump pump in it, and we just made that our shower room. We put in showers in there, put in a laundry facility and an ice machine, and pumped everything into the pit, and then we're able to pump that out into the septic system. So it's for me, that's enjoyable. I like coming in and trying to figure out, what does this look like, what do we need to have, how do we make it work, and working with what you have to build something that can be a place where people are going to come and experience God in a new way. They're taken out of their comfort zone of what they normally do at home during the week, and we kind of put them into a situation where they may be uncomfortable working in the environment that they're in, but God has the ability to take that and really use that in the same way it did that He did for me, to take that and say, what is it that, what's God speaking to you, or what is He showing you, and what are the things that He wants you to focus on, and how to bring transformation into your own life, and as you are serving for that week. And then what does it look like when you take it home? And for us, we've had numerous churches who have come and served with us, who have gone back and started a thrift store kind of a thing, or a food bank. We've had others that have started just doing, if they have the skills to do it, a handyman service for the church members and the local community to help meet needs. It could be something as simple as going back home and doing prayer walks. That's one of the things we do with week-long teams, is we take them out into the neighborhood. We're working, but we're working with our hands, and working with relationships and building connections with people. But we make people stop and go throughout the neighborhood, and we just pray. If we meet people, we talk to them, we listen to their story, help them process what their experience, but we pray with them. And sometimes, that's something that we've seen happen numerous times with, high school or college age kids. They'll go back home and start a ministry where they just prayer walk the neighborhoods. And the amazing things that happen out of that prayer walk and connection with people, and just kind of being present in the neighborhood, is amazing to hear the stories of people who have, come to know Christ, or have maybe rededicated their life to Christ and come to church, and, just those sorts of things that you really want to see happen as a result of this. God causes those things to happen in the lives in ways that you can't really explain. And it's just neat to see how God takes those and uses those instances out of something that looks so destructive and so disruptive and so, terrible. God's in the business of making lemonade out of lemons, and this is what happens with this. Not only there in the community that's affected, but also the communities that come and send people, and then as those folks go back home, we start to see some things develop back there too, as a result of them serving for a week. So
we got a little taste of that just with our team of 6 that went down for the day, and I loved how you took that approach with us, Kevin, of making it a brief training orientation, but just that phrase you used, people over programs, guys, people over programs. If you have an opportunity to talk to the homeowners and pray with them and stuff like that, was a really good orientation. And coming out of that, our guys were like, we want to go to Cuba. So now we got a work team going to Cuba to do similar stuff. So that was really good. Let's wrap this up with kind of an invitation. John, why don't you just share a little bit, like how can people across the Free Church be praying, as they think about Hurricane Ian and the aftermath and stuff?
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. And we're not used to being in the target of need in Southwest Florida. So it's a great opportunity for us to be a facilitator of what Kevin just described, not only for our people, but for people from other churches, as I've witnessed them come down. So put us on your map for multiplying churches. We're in the hinterlands of the Free Church down here. There's just not very many. And so there's a great opportunity in Mission
The
Field
jungle frontier that is Florida. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So, but there's great opportunity to plant more churches, but it's difficult to sound that alarm in a normal day. They're like, well, that's where we go to vacation, and it's like, yeah, but there's a missional need here. And so for such a time as this, God's laid this opportunity at our feet. So the invitation is, come, send teams. It will be a great experience. Kevin and his team will help facilitate this. You're not just going to be serving people who are in desperate need, but you're coming alongside churches that want to reach their community. So you're helping a church planting effort by coming down and doing that as well. So, and I agree with Kevin. I think if people came down, when they come down and they engage with us and they see what we're doing, it can spark an interest in their own community to do the same sort of thing. So I'm grateful for Kevin, for Reach Global, for Crisis Response, because we couldn't do this on our own. We are very small churches with very limited resources. And so they are helping us for such a time as this, utilize this need and this opportunity in our community to fulfill our mission. And it is putting us on the radar of other churches. We had a church in Tennessee that's highlighting what's happening down here that would never have happened before Ian. And so they're praying for us. They're going to be sending teams. They're raising money. And we're grateful for all of those things. And we want to leverage that, if I can use that word, for our mission, and which is all of our mission. It's all of our church's mission. So please come to Southwest Florida. It's going to be cold up north soon. So come.
Well, and I'll echo that for Tampa. I'm a part of a gospel network we're trying to build to reach Tampa Bay. And that's our prayer following Hurricane Ian, that most of the Bay was not that badly affected. But we're praying for revival. We're praying for mobilization. And so it's an opportunity for those less affected up in Tampa Bay North to come down and serve Sarasota all the way to Naples and just be a part of that. We are a family. So yeah, that's good. Kevin, give just one last little, if people were going to come, what kind of things, what's the time frame parameter, and what's the process? Who do they contact and how?
Yeah, you can go to respond at efca.org. That will get you, and just share your interest with us. That'll get you connected with us, and you'll get to talk with Jessica Schutte, our volunteer coordinator. She will help you to walk through the process of what it takes to put a team together, and give you options for weeks that are available for us to have you come. We typically, our week looks like a Sunday night arrival time. We do some orientation on Sunday night, and then Monday we do some trainings in the morning. And then you're out in the community pretty much the rest of the week through Friday noon. And then, if we've got some local teams like your, local, regional maybe is a better word for teams like Darin with your church that came down, we'll try and fit it in on a different day and do a day trip that way. I think, that was really helpful for us, especially Englewood is an hour and a half drive from Fort Myers, and it's really hard for us to take a team up there every day. So there's needs up there, and if we've got some local churches in Florida that want to come for a day, we can accommodate some of that activity as well. But for the most part, our week-long teams are kind of our bread and butter. And those, again, just you don't have to have any skill at all. It's helpful if you have some construction background or know how to run a chainsaw or whatever, but that's really not necessary, as we will train you
The
to
instruction for me was, Darin, try not to pass out.
Right.
Hey,
Yep,
and just so you know,
exactly.
we had 70-year-old ladies volunteering, and they were pulling staples out of studs and unscrewing
I
screws that
appreciate the
were left.
comparison, John. Thank you for that.
So you'd fit right in, Darin. That'd be great.
Yeah, and even just folks who, like from my initial experience, folks who are willing to sit on the porch and talk to people and pray with people, and walk the neighborhood and pray. If you've got I was back in church for the first time in 6 weeks here in Covington this past Sunday, and the guy in front of me has been, during Ida, he cooked meals for us when we had teams here in Covington. And I said, Chuck, you plan on going over to Florida? He's like, I'm 70 years old, man. I can't do anything over there. You guys don't need me. I'm like, Chuck, you talk to people. You can pray with people. You're a relationship guy. Why wouldn't you come? So I don't know if he'll come or not, but we've got a team coming from Covington next week over to Florida, and I'll be joining that team coming back over again. I hope Chuck's on it, and I hope other people like Chuck are willing to come and serve, whether you can cook, you can clean, you can meet with people and share the gospel and just listen and pray, or if you're working with your hands. We need everybody in that, and it's open to everybody, and we want to have you come and serve and see how God transforms your life and just changes the way you think about ministry, changes the way you think about home. If we have people who come, there's folks who just come and serve for a week and go back home, guys that come and serve, and their wives say, wow, what happened? Like you're a different guy. And I've had wives actually come up to me and thank me when I've been in their churches sharing about that. So it's an amazing ministry. It's a way for you to engage in ministry that is it may be a little scary, it may be a little uncomfortable, but God's going to take that and use that and affect people's lives, especially your own. A lot of times we come with the intention of serving people and affecting others' lives. A lot of times we're the ones that are affected in how we just have a different viewpoint of ministry and of what God can do when we step out in obedience.
Well, thanks so much. Really appreciate you all sharing, taking the time. Kevin, thanks for what you're doing. Glenn, you got 30 seconds. Pray us out.
Happy to. Father, we're so thrilled with how we see you at work. History is filled with how creative you are in taking the disruptions of our lives and turning them into things that can glorify you. And when we see churches come together, we see this work being done in your name and flowing with the Holy Spirit empowered love. It's just an amazing thing. So Father, we want to see that more and more. And I'm just so thankful for all these on this call and all that they represent to be able to see that further as who knows what life's going to bring, but we want to be ready